Yeah, we're going to spend a little time going through some of these rather nonsense demos and trying to figure out some of the techniques related with component writing or writing plugins to the IDE. This is a presentation I've done many times. There's not much new material, but it's just a roundup of things that you can do with Delphi. Well, actually, with any development tools in the Windows world. And I wanted to start by, I might have actually a couple of what was that? A couple of demos that at times I use for the starting point, but I'm not finding them. So let's start with the actual code. So the first thing I'm going to go through is we're going to go through a few components that are pretty nonsense. The first one is called nothing, because as the name implies, it really does nothing. So basically it's a graphic control. So being a graphic control implies that it doesn't consume Windows handles and Windows resources. That's something that was relevant in the early days of the product, where Windows resources were scarce. Now they're in big numbers. Still, the graphic control makes sense, and it's basically just a control that doesn't do anything. It just resurfaces properties that are available in the base class, but they're not published. So what you can do, and that's not just for a component, you can always enhance the visibility of a property in a derived class. So you can say, oh, this property align, show hint, on click, whatever, that was public in tgraphic control, I want it to be published and visible in the object inspector in my nothing component. And the other thing that this program actually demonstrates is the role of the default value. Default value is a way to indicate that a property has a default value, and that only implies that it's not going to be streamed, it's not going to be saved when the value is matches the default value. So these declarations here are just relevant for in terms of streaming. So they just indicate to the streaming system what to do, but they do not enforce in any way the initial value. That's why you need to match any default value on any component in the constructor by actually setting that value as a default. Otherwise, you set it 50, it's not saved, it's reloaded, it's set back to 0. Okay, so let's actually see this in action, and to do that I need to build this package, and then I need to install the package, and we have a bunch of new components. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new project to this project group, and it's going to be a simple Delphi VCL VCL forms application. Nothing special here. And then we're going to do is grab my my new component, which has been registered, and just drop it into the form. And the component shows up at design time, as you can see here. But of course, if we actually run the application, and when I run it, I'll get into the issue that it doesn't find the DCU or the Pascal files for the library. So what I need to do is actually to get this folder, and the easiest way is to show this into Explorer. So now I have the folder, and I can just grab the folder and add it to the search path of the second project. So let's go project options and go to the search path and add that folder. Okay, now we should be good, and we should be able to run this application. Now the application doesn't display anything because there is, I mean, the component is visible at design time somehow, but it's absolutely non-visible at runtime. So the trick that I used to do to actually showcase this is actually adding a hint like there is nothing here, and of course we need to enable showing the hints. And the other thing we can do, we can also handle an event, create an event handler and show a message. You clicked on nothing. And so, yeah, still there's nothing visible, but when you move the cursor over that surface, it says there's nothing here, and you click there, it says you click on nothing. So completely useless and rather crazy, but it gives the idea of how you can actually build a component and which are the core techniques for writing one. They also have an image here. It's a special format for component images, just a bitmap that is attached to the component. So now in the component palette, we can see the extra specific icon. Now let me get to something that does an operation. I do have a bunch of components here that provide special input capabilities, and let me do it this way. Let me actually first use these components in an actual demo, and then next I'll show you the source code. Let's keep nothing here in a corner. So the first is an input button, and I need to make it big, and the second is an input label, and again I'm going to make it big. So the concept here is that we tend to associate the concept of typing to specific components like an edit or a memo, but there is nothing inherently tied to those components that will help you accept input compared to other components. So what I've done here is actually created a couple of unusual input components. One is a button. Yes, you can click on the button, but you can also type into the button just by using your keyboard. This is certainly unusual, but there's really no reason for not doing it from a purely technical perspective. Yes, it makes the UI a bit ugly. And the other thing is an input label. And so again, here you can type and change the text of a label just by typing into the label. Now the button is fairly simple to handle. Let me actually do this thing because I need to hide some of the source code. So the button is fairly simple to handle because all you have to do is to handle the WM char. This is a Windows API message. The button has Windows handle. So by default, any keyboard operation gets notified to the component that has the input focus. So when the button has the input focus, it's going to receive the char messages. What the component, the Windows control behind the button does by default is just forget about them and ignore any input. What we can do is handle the input. So we can handle the input and just handle backspace for deletion. And if not, just grab the character and add it to the button caption. There are possibly a couple more things we want to do, but that's in essence the idea. So it's actually quite straightforward to type into a button. Now things get a little more tricky when you consider the label, because the label is not Windows control, not in the VCL, and the label hasn't got the input focus. So things get a bit tricky because if you don't get the input focus, you're not getting the WM char messages. And in fact, the label is never going to get the char messages. So how can we actually handle typing into a label if the label doesn't receive the Windows messaging? I've used actually a low-level trick here, and so we can actually get back to the entire source code. So the label uses a hidden edit for the input. That's the idea. So when we select the button, when we click on the label, what happens is actually that we are creating the enabling the edit and sending the focus to the edit control. Now the edit receives the focus, and the edit will automatically, without us having to do anything, receive the input from the keyboard. Now the next step is whenever the edit text change, to grab that text and copy it into the caption of the label and repaint the label. The other thing we do, and it's kind of a trick, I pretend that the label has the focus rectangle by drawing a fake focus rectangle around the caption. So I'm getting the bounce rectangle of the caption, and I'm drawing a focus rectangle around that area of the form, because we are just painting on the form. The label is just something painted on the form. Doesn't really exist. Now the trick here is that if we create an edit like that, the edit actually shows up, and the user can just type into the edit, and that's not what we want. So the trick, one other side of the trick, is actually to create this hidden label, making it owned by the form, because the label cannot parent. It could own, but it cannot parent the edit. And the other thing, which is quite strange in Windows, we can actually create an edit that has no visible surface. So the width and the height are 0. The edit must be visible. If the edit is not visible, you cannot type into it. But oddly enough, if the edit has 0 width and 0 height, you can still type into the edit. We have to disable the tab stop, because otherwise the user could tab to it and just, again, type into the edit directly bypassing the label. And so that's it. And it's, as we saw, it's actually working. Because we can click on the label, and again there's this fake input focus, and we can type into the edit that's well, it's not hidden, but it's too small to be visible, if we can put it that way. And again, the button was actually much easier and straightforward. I do have a couple of other similar demos. This is an automatic button for the lazy users. So what happens is that you can just move over the button, and the button will automatically fire the unclick. But I'm actually going to focus on another one, which I think is more fun. In fact, it's called Fun. I thought there was a fun edit. Okay, no, it's a fun DB edit, but that's more or less the same concept. So okay, let's do this. Let's create a very simple database application and grab that component into the code, and I'll need a couple. So what I need to do is I just need to grab, let's go for a classic. Let's grab client dataset. Let's find database file to it. And there should be something under the public documents. Oh wait, no, I don't have the demos installed here. Too bad. Okay, so let's grab a CDS file. Let's go for our customers. drop in a data source and hook it, and then hook the two edits to the data source and to separate data fields. Wait. So let's say company name, and here we display the contact. Let's enable this one. Okay, so we have this information available. Now that would look like a pretty regular application, but these edits have a spin. Now this is another way of considering making fun applications, which is kind of making fool of the users of the application. And the way this can fool the users is by turning the property that's called, I think it's called fun mode. And you have several options. You have a random skip, which means every few keys that the user will type, it will just skip one, or it will randomly override some text, or do some automatic typing, just adding extra elements randomly, or skip duplicate, so making it impossible to have the same letter twice in a row. So if we run this application now, we can just type something here and go back to the next field, and let's type word, and let's type another D, and you see I can type another D. I can type other letters, but I cannot retype the same letter twice, even if it was in another place of the word. So all letters in my words have to be different. I can't duplicate a word. So I just type my first name and last name, and I can get the C and the A there once more, because they are already part of the previous editing. And again, you can see here that we can get random extra input characters in the first edit. Again, you can tune it because it's based on a timer, and so you can make it so that this is not so obvious. And again, it's a way to really confuse a user of the application. So again, it's just background timer, and then depending on the mode, if it's random skip, it will just skip letters with a given frequency. Skip duplicates will not allow a letter that's already part of the caption. And random over will just send another send the same key twice, again at a given frequency. So it's completely nonsense and crazy approach. You can set this frequency percentage, and then of course you can set this fun mode. Then depending on the fun mode, it will enable the timer or not. So rather completely nonsense, but that's the idea. Another component that I wrote is this. Now this might not be working, I guess, because that was an older configuration. We might have to fix it, but the idea of this dataset source is an idea of a basically a self-contained application. So let me actually get rid of this stuff, because I don't. Oh no, wait. I need this folder probably. Control X. So let's get rid of this stuff, and let's wait. Mac keyboard. And let's drop in a data set source, which is a combination of a data set and a data source. And yeah, I need to change the data folder. Oh, wait, wrong. Okay, let me grab the folder again from here. That was down here. Code. Oh, where is that? Demos, data. Okay, so this is the data folder that I need to drop into. So the concept here is you just indicate the data folder, and then you can, well, I thought it was working. Auto edit, that goes data. We do have a customer CDS file there. Yeah, maybe I did something wrong in the initialization sequence. Oh yeah, because it doesn't update from the initial configuration, so it's a bug. Okay. But in theory, if I had the right folder, I'll just drop in this component and enable it. And then what you need to do is you grab an edit, you drop it, and the edit automatically, it will automatically look after any data-aware control and hook itself. Now, of course, it will hook itself and hook to a random field. So if you drop down enough edit controls, you'll get all of the fields of your data set eventually. So that's the concept. But there is nothing you have to type, nothing you have to do, nothing you have to hook up. So it's like an automatic mechanism for hooking data set, data source, and fields all at once. It does use an interesting trick, and it's completely crazy, but so it has an internal client data set that is exposed. So that's how you can expose a sub component that's an internal created component. So I use this internal name for the component itself, and you see how the name is combined into a single structure because the name, the component is surfaced. Oh, cool. Okay, no, it's not actually surface as a property. There's a special mechanism for that. The other thing that this does is it handles the notification. Now, the notification virtual method of a T component is a mechanism that's used almost universally for handling the removal of a connected component. So the typical scenario is you have a component and it has a property. There's a reference to another external component. When that other external component gets deleted, you'll receive a notification and say, hey, this component is being deleted. I have a reference. I need to set my reference to nil. So this is the classic mechanism for using notification to remove component references to components that are being destroyed. And the operation is op remove, which is the standard operation you handle in the notification method. Now, in this case, I'm actually handling insert, which is quite unusual, although I've started to see a few components that handle it and do it. Operation insert means you can be notified whenever another component is added to your form or to the same owner that you are owned by. And so you can, for example, in this case, connect yourself as the data source, connect the data source to that component. Now, the issue is the insert notification is sent extremely early in the cycle. So it is sent before the component is actually initialized. So you can really just use that component and set his properties or things, because the class hasn't been fully created yet. So what I've done here is I add the component on a to-do list, a list of components I want to do something with, enable a timer, and so after the component is created, the timer will have a chance to execute, and then what I can do is I can grab the first component in this to-do list, because maybe in the meantime there were like a couple of components added, and if it is a data-aware component, I connect the data source. Now, is data-aware is just an RTTI check, which is probably still done the very old way of using prop info. If a data source component is available, and connect just goes again the prop info and connect the data source to the component. And then if it has data field, it will also hook data field. So that's how it does the automatic configuration. Now, doing this with the new with the RTTI would be much easier, but this was done some time ago with the old tip info features that were part of the products in the early days. So this is the automatic data set and data source. I have a couple of other components, but I think I'm going to skip those because I want to get into some other fun demos. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is actually go through a few applications. This one is actually quite interesting. Yeah, let's save this demo. Wait, where to? Here, code. Fun side comps. Let's create a folder here. New folder, live Delphi week. That's a good name for the folder. And just save whatever we have. Oh yeah, sure. Why not? No, not here. Let's save it here. Okay, so this is, the concept is quite simple. It's an infinite menu. I started it as a joke because there was a time that menus were just one level, and then Microsoft started pushing for 2-level menus and 3-level menus, and I find that extremely annoying. So I created this application that has an infinite number of levels, because whenever you expand the level, it's going to create a new level, and it can go on forever. Although it's kind of tricky, because the first time you get out of the selection, it rolls back the new item. So it's not trivial to really follow such a long sequence. And then things get a little weird because the items get masked into this corner, and it's Windows behavior. There's nothing that is Delphi specific in this way the items are displayed. This is just a standard T menu with multiple, again, infinite levels of details. And the way it works is that whenever the pop-ups fires, just create a new menu and hook it to the menu item. So it's actually quite straightforward. There is the single click that is handled, and it will add a sub-menu to itself. And showing the level number. That's it. It will finish at one point. Windows doesn't really allow for infinite menus, but you can go on for quite some time. So that was it. Another thing that I've done to go a little beyond the standard system is creating tray icons. Tray icons are these icons that show up here in this tray icon area. A nice icon, as it says. And of course, you can create a few more. Every time you hit this button, it does create another nice icon. If you really want to have many, there's another button that will create 10 icons for you. While this one, actually, I think tries creating 100 icons. So we should now have a couple of 100 different tray icons, and we basically overflown the tray icon area quite nicely. Now what happens is that this application is dumb, so whenever I finish the application, I don't really get rid of the icons. So the icons stay there, although the first time you move over one of the icons, that's get deleted. Now the game becomes, how fast can you actually go through all of these icons and delete them all? If you get really consistent, it won't take a lot of time to clean and move over each of the icons, so they get cleaned up. And the code here is just low-level Windows code. That was before. Again, we had tray icons in the product, but you can handle actually a lot of things in the tray and the Windows configuration by using the Windows Shell API and some other of the low-level Windows APIs. That's actually quite a powerful and mostly neglected area of the product. Splitting windows has always been a favorite for having some fun. So the idea here is that, again, suppose that someone is typing and is using this real professional application for some operations, and then there's a button, not sure what it does, and then there's a danger button. Now, most curious user would just hit the danger button because, of course, that's what it's for. And what it does, it just breaks the windows in two, but you can still type in the window while it's moving away. I just need to be able to handle it. I think it just crashes afterwards, but that's not a big deal. So let me redo this and actually type while, okay. I probably need to use the, okay, invalid property value. That's fun. Yeah, I probably need to be able to use the tab key to tab to it and be able to type. I can type while it moves away. This is, and then it goes backwards. This is based on the concept that in Windows you can have a non-rectangular, you can have a window that is based on a non-rectangular region. I'm using create polygon region. There's also elliptical region, rectangular region. There are a few functions. The Windows API you can use to create a non-rectangular window, and then you just apply the called set Windows region API, and that's the effect you can get. I've used the same for a slightly different effect, which is also quite intriguing, which is, I think I have it here. It's a super progress bar. So this is the application. It has a progress bar. Yeah, well, I probably messed up a bit with the title. So this is a standard progress bar that moves. You can reset it. And then there is a progress bar that really goes beyond. Oops, wait, it's not working as it should have worked. It's transparent, but the border should have been there. I think I should have removed the border completely. That's my fault. Let's see if I can fix it. Yeah, border style should be none. Okay, that's the idea. And you can still drag around the window by clicking onto this label, because the way you can handle it is that in Windows there is a message, it's called hit test, and hit test is just to determine which logical part of the windows you are hitting. And so I say, hey, it's the border, and so I get the automatic Windows moving behavior. Now let's try to do the oversized progress bar that goes beyond the border of the window, and you see it's actually working in a smooth way, because I'm just cutting out the window size to leave enough room for this effect. And again, the thing I was mentioning, the hit test, yeah, it's handled for the entire window. So if the hit test is well within a given area section of the top of the window, then I say that the user has actually clicked on the window caption. So I'm mimicking the click on the caption. That implies, again, dragging the window around automatically. Okay, so what can we show next? Oh, this is one of the classic window crashes. It's, again, based on the same concept of being able to crash a window. Oh, it actually does also another thing. It causes a GP fault. This is a real GP fault. I mean, it's quite easy, honestly, to create a GP fault. But it also creates a fake GP fault this program, this is based on kind of some of the older error messages you'd get in I think Windows 2000 or that time frame. The program has performed an illegal operation. If the problem persists, contact the software vendor. Then you expand the details, and there's the registry, AX, BX, and then there's crash. What's going on here? So it's kind of a fake registry information. This is another crash that again creates a hole in the window. It's a transparent hole, so you can get things behind it. And the other thing that I did was trying to deplete the system of GDI handles. It used to be easier. Now it's a bit tricky. But I think at one point you can still trash down even a Windows application up to the point you cannot create dialog boxes anymore, and even the GP fault message won't show up because you're out of graphic handles. So the entire system doesn't become unstable, but the application itself does. Oh, let's actually try to do this. No, okay. I can run other stuff, but this application really depletes all of the resources that it can use, and it gets really completely stuck. Okay, so the last part that I wanted to cover is a few extensions into the a few design time packages. Let me see if I'm missing something relevant. Oh wait, which one of the two? Okay, well, I can go for this one. It does show a few things. So I'm going to build this. Oh wait, I know what's up. This package, yeah, this package adds a nice feature that is auto completion, auto typing inside the editor. So basically, it trashes all of the source code, and so yeah, the last time I did it, I never cleaned up the code afterwards. Still a complete disaster. Let's see if we're doing any better. Let's try to build. Okay, warnings. We shouldn't worry too much. Yeah, okay. So let's install the package. Find copyright, find new button. Okay, I'll skip the copyright demo. Okay, this is also disabled. So one feature that this program has is enables pair programming, and it's kind of of course completely fake pair programming, where you get some other developer that's automatically typing into your editor randomly. That's the idea. So your visual bot just does things automatically for you. Now, let me show a couple of things. Actually, it has some pretty advanced code. One is the way it creates a menu item and adds the menu item to a specific menu of the application it's running into. And you know the application this is running into is RAD Studio itself. So it goes for the tools menu, which is the name of this menu. And what it does, it adds menu items, actually these three menu items to the menu. Okay, so one is called camel case, and one is pair programming by yourself. If we enable the camel case, what happens? Oh no! You first have. I think you have to select some code. Let me try. and then you can camel case that code. No, wait, it's not working. Now, of course, I don't remember what he was doing. Oh, is it doing anything? Because it's not even in this. Interesting. It's not in this code, so it should be in some other unit. Oh, maybe it's here. Okay. So no, this is the alpha click. This is a camel menu. So okay, camel casing. Finds menu, add camel case menu item. Does alpha camel case and alpha camel case. Grabs the text on the clipboard and does the camel casing. So okay, so let's say we copy this, and then we do tools camel case. Wait. Okay, and then you have to paste it, and you get this camel case. Now it's not real camel case; it just gets randomly uppercase and lowercase characters. So again, let's copy something, camel case it, and paste it back. You get this extremely oddly odd cases in your code. Now the other is the pair programming. The pair programming, as I was mentioning, is just an automatic virtual helper that will share your keyboard virtually and type things in your place. And it types it retypes what you've just it repastes what you've just copied. So it just basically uses the keyboard as a source of source code demos. And it goes all over the places, like messing up completely your source code, which is quite annoying. Now, how it does that? So what this other programmer doing? Well, first thing it grabs from the clipboard. If there's nothing in the clipboard, it just creates some pretty useful piece of code. Button equal button.create nil. That's always good. But then the real thing is actually typing in the editor. So first thing it does, it needs a module. To get a module, you have to use the IOTA module services. You have to extract this interface from the Borland IDE services. And then there is a property which is the current module, the active module. Now the module is a combination of a designer, most cases, and an editor. So the thing you have to do from the module is extract the source code editor, and you can use this is done using the support function. Of course, this is going to mess up my code badly. Let's stop this camel casing thing. This pair programming thing. Oh well, not sure if there's a way to stop it. Too bad. Anyway, so it grabs the IOTA source editor interface from the current editor of the module interface. It's tricky, I know, and it casts it to iSource editor. So iSource editor is a reference to the current editor of the module. Now the source editor has a view because you can actually have multiple views to the same source code. So the source editor has a view, and the view has a cursor position. Now it goes to the cursor position. It has to do a format conversion, and then it can actually create a writer and insert text to the cursor position. Of the writer. So again, it's a bit tricky. You need the view to get the cursor position, and then you need the writer to actually type into the editor, and that's what it does. So the scenario is completely crazy, but the concept that you can actually interact with the editor and generate source code within the IDE for the current position is actually extremely powerful. And this is a demo of how to use that Tools API. The last thing that I guess I'm going to show you, and then we'll take a break and we can go through questions. We can eventually go for more demos. The other thing I wanted to show you is a bit extreme. It's called Alpha Mania. You might have already seen it in the past. The concept here is quite simple. The Rat Studio has an extremely large number of menu items, including some secondary level menus, not infinite level menus, but still a few secondary level ones. And so it might be tricky to find what you're looking for. So a solution that I came up with is to create an alpha menu. When you hit the alpha menu, the menus will be sorted alphabetically. And so you get a menu like this. You get all A menu items, and then you get all B menu items, and then all C menu items, and so on. And still you get second level menus. These are not unfolded, but you get all first level menus as separate menu items. So you need to do project options. You go for project, and you'll find project options. You need to run. You go for R, and you find run. And of course, they're also alphabetically in vertical, so they're really listed in a way that's easy. So they go from about to XML mapper, and that's the idea. Now, of course, there is by design no way to get back standard behavior. So the only option is to close the IDE, which is what I'm going to do right now. Close the IDE, forget everything, and restart it, because there's no way to break either this one or the camel case. I'm not going to save any change because they were obnoxious enough. So that's it. That's the idea, more or less. And again, I do have a few other demos here and there, but this kind of gives you a feeling of some of the completely fun and nonsense things you can do with Delphi.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marco. So if anybody's got any questions for Marco, there was one question about the utility of letting users type into a button. I think that was the point, was there is no utility, but you could if you wanted to.
Yeah, there's generally no utility. It's a bit extreme. But again, if you go for a non-standard UI, if you're like games or some weird scenarios, yeah, you might even want to do that, and it might even make sense. But no, there's no utility. And there's certainly no for in typing on a label or randomly generating characters in your edit boxes.
I did you're showing the non-rectangular windows. Actually did some used to use that trick quite a bit. I would use it to I would make a elliptical window, and I would use the hit test so I could make it so it was draggable, and I'd make rounded corners, and then I would take the generate a image in a paint program to get kind of like of beveled edges, and ended up making a kind of fancy looking form with that.
Yeah, there was a time that there were some commercial application that started taking these odd shapes. I remember, I'm not sure if I guess it was InstaShield, although it was, one of the antivirus software, Shield something, that was actually physically a shield. So rather than a rectangular window, the window was shaped like a shield. It was a complete nonsense, but it was interesting to figure out how they could handle and create such a completely oddly shaped window. There's been a few, not many, but there's been a few of this strange UI.
So I know a guy that has a software company called Spud City Software. Let's see if he has. Yeah, he used to have a product called Desktop Dozen. There was a dozen little utilities. It doesn't look like he has them up there anymore. But they each had a different. Okay, here you can find it. If you Google search Desktop Dozen, or at least I did, go to image search, you can see some of them, and they got these odd shaped UIs. I guess I can bring up my.
Okay.
Let me see here. I'll bring up my window.
Oh, can I show you one last thing?
Oh, yeah. Go
sure.
ahead.
Yeah, I actually found this one. This is actually very intriguing. This is a way to break windows. It's called Hammer, in fact. And that was actually quite a fun thing. So you have a hammer, and you can and it also has the sound, but maybe I need to take this out. Yeah, I'm not sure you can hear it, but I can just make this louder. It just smashes the window. Okay, and then there's a big echo here. And of course, then you can change the settings, and you can go for a chainsaw, or you can go for a bunch of other like machine guns. And of course, it's just a bitmap. And so what happens is that it's just paint on a bitmap. It's not a real thing, and it can even wash up.
Yeah, it takes a screenshot of your
window.
screen and does
Yeah,
that.
it's just a screenshot. I actually had another one that was a rolling. I don't think I actually have it here. That was a rolling thing. So like in the old-fashioned TV, where the TV was out of sync and the entire image would like move up and down a bit, or black and white TVs for those with gray hair or no hair left. And so I was mimicking the same on Windows. I have this image just going up and down a little bit, just to. I think it's actually this one is scramble. Yeah, so actually the entire window just scrolls up and down. And it's, of course, just an image. So you just capture a bitmap, and then you get things moving. So it's completely fake, but that's the idea. And, of course, then you have just used Alt F4, which is a little more tricky on the Mac to close that thing. So, okay, so let's take this, grab the screen.
Okay. Yeah, these are actually made in Delphi. So here's the calculator. This has got this crazy shape to it, or you can run it in regular mode. Oh, you're not seeing it?
Yeah.
All right, let me.
I can see it, so I guess I'm not alone.
No, all right. Show my screen. There we go. Nice, you see it.
Yeah, I know it's visible.
Okay, so this is the calculator with the shaped form, and then here's the calculator without the shaped form. So it's just the idea that was. He said he originally made it with these, and you can see he's got nice graphics made, so it looks really slick. But apparently users were not impressed, so then he released an update that had the non-shaped version going. But anyway, was the desktop dozen. Let's see, there's a couple other questions here. Link back up. So Alf says there's always April 1st for using these, and that there was a gun available as well, which is you showed the gun too. With the hammer,
sure.
the gun.
No, actually, it's interesting because when I was showing some of these demos, I actually got some real world one. I mean, some people actually were putting like this like April 1st, April Fool, or other things into real application, just so that in a specific computer of a specific person, they will just misbehave and they were just making fun of that person. And other times were just randomly. So I got someone send me an example of a real way of handling the tab key. Rather than moving horizontally from line to line, a newbie had implemented a tab key that were going in circles between the edit boxes. He was convinced that was a good idea. So at times it just happens.